It's awesome, funny, random, doesn't make any sense, but it's good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. As always, you're welcome. We are going to shoot the shit tonight with someone who I've known about for a long time, and a lot of you have known about for a long time, and I'm so glad to have him on the channel, and that is Devin Sunde, the mastermind behind the Love and Sects. What's the word? The the Love and Sects. I don't want to say comic. He's going to tell me. I've written it in the description. Devin, hi. It's not a comic. It's a
Hi.
graphic novel. The
Well,
Love and
I
Sex
mean,
graphic
comic is
novel.
fine. It was released at first as a webcomic, and then like remastered and released as a graphic novel. So comic is fine as a term.
Okay, awesome. Because I thought I'd really offended you then in the first minute. But yeah, no, welcome to the show. You are coming all the way from Portland, Oregon, so 8 hours behind me here in the purple room. All the purple will become clear a little bit later in the show. But this week I've had the opportunity to read through Love and Sex in preparation for this interview. And I just want to say, one, it's great. It's fantastic. Anyone that has read it, let us know in the chat. There's also a poll to find out how many of you have read it. And there's no option to say that you're never going to read it. It's either yes, I read it and it was amazing, or no, I haven't yet, but I'm going to. So we only want positive things tonight. And for anyone who does want to read the comic, you can go to www.devinsunde.com and you can either download the graphic novel as a PDF, or you can get through to Devin's Etsy store if you want a physical copy of the graphic novel. All I could see then, Devin, was my mind is gone. Was Sheldon Cooper in the comic store arguing with someone that it's not a comic, it's a graphic novel?
Yeah, that distinction is like people aren't anal about it so much anymore. It's more of a like late '90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
Argument there.
Well, yeah. Well, you know what? It's fantastic. And what we want to do tonight is we want to get to know a little bit more about you, Devin, but also we really want to get to know about Love and Sex. We won't spoil the storyline. There won't be any spoilers about the end because we really encourage you to go and read it yourself. We're like the church. We're going to say, read and pray about Love and Sex. Forget the Book of Mormon. But Devin, you were brought up or you grew up in Northern Virginia. Now,
Yes.
being from Britain, the only Virginia I know is from the West Virginia Mountain Mama who sung that. That's John Denver.
John Denver, yeah.
Where's Northern Virginia?
So, I mean, just there is a state called Virginia, and just up and to the right is West Virginia. Virginia comes up to a point at the north end, and I grew up in the like 2 or 3 counties furthest north in there. Like my what I consider my hometown is Winchester, which is in Frederick County, just sort of right nestled in the West Virginia Eastern Panhandle.
Okay. And were you born, I guess, a Mormon, or did you come to Mormonism later in life?
Yeah, I was born in the covenant, as they say. My mother was a lifelong member. My father converted about the time they married.
Okay. I don't know if we call it born in the covenant or had no choice. Yeah.
Hey, that's apt, yeah.
Yeah. I've spoken about it with my wife, and we've got some family members coming up to 8. And you think, if they can't choose what flavor of ice cream they want yet, can they choose to be baptized? Really, I don't know.
Mhm.
It's a random one. But reading from your website, you were homeschooled. Was that
Yes.
a religious choice by your parents to keep you away from the dark and dreary world?
Um, Probably as much political as it was religious. Basically, just my mother wanted more direct control over my brain and
Okay,
everything that I knew and thought.
fair enough.
Um,
Okay, well, I guess what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight is that Love and Sex doesn't just cover Mormonism; it covers two sects, and that is Mormonism and Jehovah's Witnesses. And I know that we do have some Jehovah's Witnesses in the chat this evening. Shout out to Ryan Lugo in Salt Lake, a Jehovah's Witness from Salt Lake. That must be difficult. Um,
yeah.
but um, on the face of things, a lot of Mormons homeschool, a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses homeschool for the same reason. Do you feel
Mhm.
that being homeschooled had a detrimental effect or positive or six of one, half a dozen
Um,
of the other?
Having had years to reflect, I think it would have been a little bit better if I had been public schooled.
Okay.
Um, there are advantages to having been homeschooled, but I do feel like I started, I entered adulthood behind my peers. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not for against. I know a lot of people, a lot of different things work for a lot of different people.
yeah, and
Um,
there are many different types of homeschooling. My mother was pretty hands off about it, and
okay.
so I did a lot of self directed, like reading from the encyclopedia, um, in order to keep myself,
You
uh,
you were like Joseph Smith.
mentally growing. I do not wish to claim to be like him in any way.
Well, you look like you're in a special grove of trees right now. all
Right,
the all
right.
the creation room at
My
the temple.
background. Yeah.
No, it's fantastic. I love it. We've like I said, we've gone all purple tonight because purple, the color purple, has a key role in love and sex. So let's take a quick look at some of that now. Um, so just this image at the beginning that I put on the thumbnail here of this young man at the veil in the temple, and it reads, "If God knows my heart, what good are signs and tokens?" And I think it kind of boils the whole temple experience down to what's the point in this really expensive cosplay if God knows my
Yeah.
heart?
It's manufactured exclusivity. Um,
Yes, which comes up on the cult kind of scale, having that
yeah.
exclusivity and kind of in club. So we're gonna move into love and sex, but before we do, this week on my socials, I put these two clues on to see if anyone could guess who was going to be with us this evening. And before I scheduled the show and announced it, the first clue was this merman with the angel Moroni, with some little Easter eggs in the background, some money, the golden plates, um, the Leahona. Um, but Devin, what was the? Because this isn't in Love and Sex. This was from your
No.
Instagram.
Yeah, I did a little. After I finished the book, I did a little. Uh, I'm going to generously call it a triptych. Three images with some accompanying text that tells sort of a condensed version of the story, but where it's about mer people.
Okay.
Um, the imagery very inspired by Disney's The Little Mermaid.
Yeah,
And
if they had Mormon missionaries down there, that's what the guide looked like.
yeah, so at least in my generation, there seems to be a special affinity for The Little Mermaid amongst Mormons and ex-Mormons. There's like an artist I know who's an ex-Mormon, and she got really into mermaids because of that movie. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to. There's a hashtag event thing that goes around on Instagram every May called Mermay, where a bunch of artists get together to draw mermaids, and this is the best I could come up with to fit it within my style.
It's far better than I could have done. So congratulations there. We did have some guesses from that image. One was that Moroni was coming on, which wouldn't have been fantastic as Devin coming on, but would have been a close second.
That would have been quite a get to get actual Moroni.
Mate,
I mean, first of all, it would prove the existence of the Nephites, which would be headline news. But
I'd like to imagine that if there ever was a Moroni, which I'm sure in the billions of people that have been, there will have been after this because people call themselves or their children after Book of Mormon characters. But if there was ever a pre-Mormon Moroni, that if he came back, he'd just be really pissed off that his name and his like lineage had been used to create this really weird kind of Bible fan fiction from the 19th century.
Yeah.
Like that's the reason for the trumpet. He wants to tell everyone, not in my name. But yeah, that would have been a good get. I don't know how the camera would have handled all the bright light and everything, but we'd have found a way. So the second clue was this image taken from Love Sects, and it is the main character in the celestial room after he's been through the temple ceremony for the first time. But it's just a windowless room in a moderately tall building is his thought.
Yeah.
Was that something that was, I guess, your own thinking or just for the novel?
Well, my own temple experience is quite a bit unlike the book. I never got quite as far as getting a mission call before I kind of deliberately
Yeah,
I don't know how to approach it.
We'll get there.
Basically, okay. Basically, I went through the temple the first time, and actually the only time, when I was getting sealed to my wife after we had been already civilly married for a year.
Yeah.
Because that was required at the time.
Yeah.
And I was able to keep most of the screaming doubts in the back of my mind, but my wife was seriously freaked out by the temple.
Yeah, you would be.
Yeah. I mean, especially as a woman, because this was before they changed the wording in 2019. So wives were still, covenanting to obey their husbands as they obey Jesus.
Yeah. Well, it was worse before that. Back in the 19th century, they had to covenant because their husband was their lord and the only lord they had anything to do with. And without their husband being their lord, they couldn't get to any kind of exaltation. So the 21st century one, by those standards, was I guess, less bad, but still bad.
Yeah.
So, did your wife have any family members who were Mormons as well?
No. She joined the church as a teenager. Had made some school friends who were members, and joined up on her own. And so none of her family got to see us at the temple. But
Okay. Yeah. But it must have been hard for her not having any. I think it's easier when you've got a big group of people that you know around you kind of to G you on and be like, yes, this is right, this is okay. But if she sat there
yeah,
with you and you're already doubting, like, I'm not saying
yeah,
it's
that
a
that
bad thing.
that peer pressure aspect of, hey, we're all in on this. You need to be cool with this is something that the church really banks on.
Yeah.
And so not having that with someone who is the only member in their family probably leads to a lot of disillusionment.
Yeah. And yeah, without that peer pressure and love bomb,
Yeah.
there's nothing to kind of take the edge off the shock. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Mhm.
When I first went and they started waving and chanting, I kind of looked at my dad and he was doing it. So I was like, oh, I guess so. My brothers were doing it and my mum was doing it. So you just kind of carry on, don't you? You know, it's your tribe. But thankfully we're all past that now.
Yes.
But yeah, after Clue 2, the first person to get it, congratulations to Exmo Candles. If
Mhm.
no one has been to the Exmo Candles store yet, you can find her on Instagram and go to exmocandles.com. And she does some fantastic scented ex-Mormon related candles with funny ex-Mormon related quips on them. So, and
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll be with us at some point later this evening.
I want so bad to buy, one or two of her candles, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet, and I feel really bad. She was actually good enough to back the Kickstarter for the printing of the book, and so she's got a copy.
Wow,
Um,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I saw that you got Kickstarters are always fantastic, and eventually when I get round to it, I'll be doing one myself for the book, which is pretty much written called Meet the Schmooners. You can't meet the Mormons anymore, but you can meet the Schmooners, who are a classic Mormon family going through comedic Mormon experiences that you only get in high demand religion. So I have to find an artist who wants to illustrate. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk about that later. Mormon Civil War, he's an artist as well, and he's offered to do some. So I won't upset him because he's in the chat as well. So your other work, because it's not just Love and Sex that Devin Sunde has done. There was also, I'm going to ask you to pronounce it again, the middle one.
Wormholler.
Worm Hollow. What's that about?
So that is an illustrated memoir from actually an English guy who travels to West Virginia and meets up with a group of demons and fairies and monsters and whatnot, and helps to defend them from a radical sect very much inspired by Mormonism and Jehovah's Witnesses and Scientology. Um, and uh, and my other project that you have up on screen here, Enter the Fray, actually takes place in the same world as that.
Okay.
And there will be a little bit of overlap with characters. They're separated by about 30 years in the timeline, but
for anyone I guess, that's come from a Jehovah's Witness background, a Mormon background, they will see the similarities and some of the nuance in there that possibly a reader who doesn't have any experience there might not see.
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's take a look first of all. On the last video, you guys absolutely smashed it out of the park. We got almost 500 likes. We want to get 400 on this one. I know you can do it. Currently, we're on 14, but I know you can do it because I have faith in you. And also, you can subscribe to the channel. That'd be great and a great way to support it. This coming week is Halloween. We've got a Halloween special. We had a beautiful model come in and model dead person's temple clothes, or what you might look like if you were dragged, I guess, out of the coffin in your temple robes. But that will be this Halloween week, where we go on PD's Paramormon investigation. But now to Love and Sex, the ballad of Jesse and Joanna. So Jesse is the main character. These are two different covers. What I do like a lot is the kind of equal billing for Mormonism and the Jehovah's Witnesses. The fact that we've got Moroni and the Watchtower in each of these, in the shadow, and with Jesse and Joanna, because yeah, it's not just about Mormonism. And I guess the novel starts with would you say Jesse is you to a point?
To a point, yes. The story and the characterization diverge the further the story goes, but yeah, he, like, on paper it sounds very much like me, like 18-year-old Mormon boy who is preparing to serve a mission, and meets a Jehovah's Witness. He's homeschooled, and he meets a Jehovah's Witness girl in a ballroom dance class. Like, that much at least is absolutely my story.
Okay, and that kind of brings us to the whole rub that you've got here in Love and Sex, and it's the difference between, I guess, can love be enough to overcome the sex, and the fact that it's difficult when you're both in really staunch families to overcome that. I could imagine that if I told my parents when I was like 18 that I'd met a Jehovah's Witness girl, that they would have, crapped the bed, because it's like meeting one of Satan's spawn, isn't it? I'm not saying that Jehovah's Witnesses are Satan's spawn. I'm saying to them, to a full believing Mormon who wants their children to grow and be married in the temple, meeting a non-member.
There is definitely, Jehovah's Witnesses definitely have a reputation within Mormonism, and I tried to portray that a little ways in through the characters of this elderly couple of missionaries, trying to talk Jesse through it and give him advice.
Yeah. And I remember as a young 15, 16-year-old, I met a girl at work, because here in the UK we go to work a lot earlier. But she was Methodist. And usually when you hear Methodist, you're kind of like, well, you're not really anything then, are you? Because if you're not Mormon or you're not a Jehovah's Witness, then no one else really takes their religion seriously. But this Methodist family took their religion really seriously. And her mother saw me as the spawn of Satan and wouldn't let us be alone or kind of out of the house together or anything. I could go over for an hour, but then she'd kind of stamp on the ceiling from upstairs, which meant it was time for PD to go home. So that made me feel great about myself. Did you have any interactions with Joanna's family.
Or rather, the real life analog to Joanna.
Yeah.
No, not really. I met her mother like once or twice, but we didn't really get opportunities to hang out outside of the ballroom dance class.
Yeah.
It was sort of a situation where we were both going to the class, and like all of this happened between the months of June and December, or I guess November, basically. I tried to keep up the pseudo relationship
Yeah.
after, but it sort of fizzled in a way that would have been pretty undramatic to translate one to one for the comic. But
Do you remember there being any particular, I guess, doctrines that you spoke about? Because in the novel, there are parts where you do handle some conversation between Jesse and Joanna about we believe this, you believe this. Did you ever, I guess, come to that in real life?
yes, I don't remember every conversation we had about it, but there were several, and it's um, a lot of sort of the ones you would expect. The thing about not taking blood,
Hmm.
the thing about not celebrating holidays. Um,
Yeah, the standard kind of the well-known ones. So from the Jehovah's Witness side, like you say, no Christmas, no
yeah.
birthdays, no blood. And then from the Mormon side, kind of polygamy, cosplay in the castle,
Mhm.
plantation. I'm gonna be a god.
Yeah, and like the weird little esoteric Mormon things where like uh canonically in Mormonism, Jesus is Jehovah, and because like
Yes,
in to the Jehovah's Witnesses, Jesus is not a literal son of God, but like his first and most powerful creation,
yes,
something like that.
yeah.
Um, and so just like yeah, some fundamental disagreements about the nature of divinity, um, and
Which is
you
always
know,
a good place to start with a relationship.
yeah,
I don't want anything heavy, but let's argue about God and politics. Uh, yeah, interesting. So let's just take that down a second. So, for anyone who has read Love and Sex, or I know all of you are going to go and read Love and Sex, the stories from your story and the book kind of diverge at the point where in real life you stop dating the Jehovah's Witness girl.
yeah.
What
Um,
I guess what happened there?
um, it just sort of petered out. Like it had gotten to be not very fun and conflict. She's the one who sort of made the call to end it, um, and yeah, it just sort of petered out. In the end, she just stopped replying to my emails, my AOL Instant Messenger chat requests, because
Which was
this
your
was
main kind
back
of
in
communication?
yeah, it was our only line of communication when she stopped going to the ballroom dance class.
Okay.
Um,
Because that was more secret from family.
yeah, basically, Like, it was the sort of thing where we never, like, if we were going to acknowledge the nature of the relationship, it was going to be in the form of her telling me that it's not what Jehovah wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always a tough one because from the Jehovah's Witnesses that I've interviewed before, it becomes clear that parents are quite happy and children are quite happy to tell their parents that they love Jehovah more than them. And for that reason, they need to shun them. And it must be even easier to tell a boyfriend that, or someone who's kind of unattached. But it would have been devastating to hear if you were really emotionally invested there. So it's a tough one.
Yeah.
But you met a wonderful Mormon girl.
Yes.
Preparing for your mission.
Yeah, and so I kind of grafted some different experiences together. Like, dramatically, it works very well to have the ticking clock of Jesse receiving his mission call, and having the looming departure date to heighten the conflict. I never quite had that, but that was definitely a source of friction. And yeah, I ended up making the choice to not go on the mission and to actually sort of escape into the night, move out of my parents' house. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, was able to arrange a place for me to stay. But I actually did not end up leaving the church for another 3 to 4 years. I don't remember the actual date of my resignation, but I made an effort to stick around, because I didn't want to be like the angry ex-Mormon who left because they got offended. Even though I had
the cliche.
I had some serious offenses against me that, like, should have been enough of a signal that I should leave.
Yeah. And did your family, I guess, shun you kind of in it because you didn't go on a mission? What was the reaction there?
Yeah, so they basically cracked down really hard on me. Like, they were still under the delusion that I might go if they could end my relationship. And so they confiscated my phone and my computer, restricted my, they took away my internet access. The only access I had to a computer with an internet connection was if I was to walk 5 miles to the local public library.
Wow.
And so I would do that like 2 or 3 times a week.
Man, that's heavy. Like,
yeah, it was a heavy period of my life there, between like late September to mid-February of 2017, not 2017, 2007 into 2008. I'm old.
You're not that old. But, I think we're the same generation. Don't say old. But yeah, and it's amazing that through that process, you and your wife kind of stayed together and built something that's lasted, if you know what I mean, and kind of shown those other people you were wrong and we're better for it. But what was it, I guess, that started Love and Sects? What point in life did you get to where you thought, you know what, this would make a really cool graphic novel and I'm going to write it, damn the world?
Okay, so for a long time I had a story that I wanted to tell, that was a fantasy series, and I wanted to do it as a series of animations, and that is what has become enter the fray. But after we left the church, we moved to Oregon. I started considering comics as a way to tell stories that's much less time consuming and involved than animation. Like you can get more story done in the same number of drawings.
Okay.
And I didn't have a whole lot of free time. But I wasn't ready to do Enter the Fray yet. And so I thought, hey, this is a nice, simple, short story that I could do, not realizing that it would
Simple.
eat up about 5 years of my life. So yeah, that's when I decided to do Love Sects as my simple first comic.
Simple first comic.
Yeah, I was very, very wrong about that. But
Yeah.
when I first left the church, I again didn't want to be that person who left because they got offended. I wanted to sort of be above the drama and the conflict with the church, and I was
Yeah.
able to keep that up for a couple years before I started really like feeling the anger. And so like I had my my angry ex-Mormon phase started basically in 2014, 2015. Started listening to a bunch of podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what helps me decide to just go for it. Like it gave me a a ramp to launch into for writing the story.
Yeah, I don't
Kind of needed some of the anger.
I don't think people give the angry ex-Mormon stage enough credit, because it's the angry ex-Mormon stage, I think, that, like you say, kind of pushes us all to create these things and to push
Mhm.
back. And to, yeah, that's why we're sat here now. I got to the end of my angry ex-Mormon phase and then thought, now I've calmed down a bit, what
Mhm.
can I do to push back a bit? And
Yeah.
it sounds like it was a similar thing for yourself. So like you mentioned at the beginning about the temple, having been married for a year and then going through the temple, there's a scene from Love and Sex that I just want to take a quick look at, and it's this scene here.
Yes.
I guess, was this true to life, where you're just kind of like, wait, this is mostly video?
Yeah. Yeah. It broke my immersion to a degree. Thinking that like these are actors, they built a set. There was
Yeah,
an editor who worked on this, at least one. Um, there
yeah,
were some rudimentary visual effects. Um,
yeah,
like
and the fact that they had porn shoulders in the Garden of Eden.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
like yeah, just the fact that there was this little industry basically that had to exist to produce a little movie, um, and that's what it was at the top of the mountain, so to speak. Um,
yeah. My
was
parents always used to tell me that it was a bit like the nuclear codes, and that the film for the visual and the audio could never travel together. That they were like, they had to travel separately. So if
right.
someone got a
Yeah,
hold of the film, they didn't have the audio. If someone got the audio, they didn't have the film. So they
yeah.
could
I think
never
I was told
have,
that too.
yeah, they could never have the full set of like passwords and signs and stuff, because some are given audibly and some are given visually.
Uh-huh.
So they,
And all it took was new name Noah sneaking an iPhone in, like in his tie.
was that what he
His
did it with?
yeah, that's what I've heard is that he poked a hole in his tie big enough for the camera lens, and
Oh my gosh, yeah, I bet you could fit one in back then because they were smaller.
yeah,
Uh, That's fantastic. But yeah, it was like, yeah, imagine some general authority with a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist, traveling across the world from temple to temple to give them the fresh, updated movie on like Betamax or whatever it is. So the temple's gone, Mormonism is gone. You've moved out to Oregon or Portland, Oregon, and you're having a great time. But not everything can be great, I guess. My question would be, how's the weather in Portland, Oregon? Because I'm British, we have to ask that.
So I think it has actually changed a bit just in the time I've lived here. But it gets quite hot in the summer, and pretty dry. So like close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. And then once you hit late October, like we just in the past week, we've hit this point. It is gray skies and rain until March.
Yeah, I think RFM's up that way, and he was telling me, I think he's near Puget Sound. Is that further north than you guys? A lot further north?
Yeah, that's in Washington State, so it's the one
There you go.
just north of us.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Puget Sound area gets a lot of rain.
Yeah. So what we want to look at now are some of the things that I picked up as I went through, and you guys will pick them up as well as you go through. But a couple of quirky bits. When I was going through, I was on my mobile, reading it on my mobile, and to get from chapter to chapter, you'd done left click instead of right click. Like at the bottom, it's got the 2 chapters, and to go forwards, you had to click left instead of right. The reason for that, from the look on your face, you're telling me no. That it was random.
I mean, it depends on where you're looking at it. I published it as many places as I could think of.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. The website format has changed also since it finished. And so it's now like a series of blog posts on my new website.
Yep.
And so I can't vouch for how the navigation works.
Okay. I didn't know if it was something quirky, like, well, to go forward, we had to go back, and kind of going in that direction is going back. Like, if you want to say that's what it is now.
Metaphorically resonant as that.
But you can have that if you want to use it. Like, to go forward, we had to go back. If anyone asks about it again, you don't even tell them I came up with it. Just claim it.
Sure.
The other thing, your hair is swept to the right, and in the comic, the character's hair is swept to the left at the beginning, and then as it gets to the end of the comic, the sweep changes to the right.
Yeah, so this is a detail I was made aware of, like when I was in the early planning stages, where the famous example of this is in the old Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve Superman movies. When he's Clark Kent, he has his hair brushed one way. When he's Superman, he has it brushed the other way.
Okay.
And I wanted to do something similar to that. Like the way your hand would sort of naturally brush through your hair if you're right-handed, we'll sweep it towards your right. I wanted to show that the character Jesse is in fact right-handed, but he brushes it as if he's left, until there's a change that happens later in the book. His hair gets messed up. When you see him after that, he has it brushed the way that is more natural, more it's sort of the correct direction It's the one that we associate more with like trustworthy and heroic characters in media.
And it's these kind of little Easter eggs that are in there, because I didn't realize until I got to the end of the book and started reading some more, that nuance was actually there. But it's really impressive, kind of, how it delineates his spiritual kind of being or his paradigm shift. You know,
Yes.
the world shifted to the left and his hair shifted to the right.
Right. Yeah.
So let's explain all this purple. The color purple. Go.
Yeah. So the purple and also pink. I just as a subconscious bit of storytelling, I associated those with the character of Joanna. And so there's a point in the book where she exits the story for a while. And at that point, I pull out pretty much all of the pinks and purples from the visuals. There are a couple places where I couldn't get away with removing them entirely, but I muted them, made them less vivid at those points, just to give a visual indicator of him missing her. The sort of the void that is left there with her not talking to him.
The world becomes less colorful until later in the book when something else happens, which we won't talk about. We don't want to give it away.
Like I'm not too precious about spoilers, but I would like people to actually read it. So.
Exactly. So let's keep stum. But as you are now, you put out some actual images of you and your lovely wife, who was wearing slightly different colors now, in these greens and reds.
Yes.
I wish I could create those images myself, because I know it would earn me some serious man points, some serious husband points. But yeah, they're fantastic, and I'm so glad that even though we're not giving the end away, that your kind of current state of being is represented here, and that's fantastic for everything that you'd been through before. So guys, you need to go to devinsunde.com, either get the Etsy store up and get a physical copy, or purchase the PDF, because it's clear that Devin has spent a whole lot of time, talent, and effort on this, and it gives, both from the Mormon and Jehovah's Witness point of view, a fantastic, I guess, something that we would all recognize but maybe haven't experienced ourselves, and that is when those two worlds collide. How do you navigate that?
Yes. And it's useful for the deconstruction of the religion to have a point of comparison, because if you are a Mormon trying to deconvert someone from Jehovah's Witness, a lot of the research and talking points that you come up with will just rebound back on your own faith, and so it's this tricky position to be in and try to remain faithful.
Yeah, and I went with my Methodist girlfriend. I went to her church with her, secretly, to kind of please her parents. She wasn't allowed to come to any youth activities at the Mormon church, obviously, but I went to the Methodist church.
Of course.
Yeah, to try and please the parents. And it was it was strange. It was different. It was a different world to what I'd grown up in, and you would have thought it would be very similar because Joseph Smith based Mormonism on Methodism, but we've 200 years down the road is very different.
Yeah, well, I mean, hell, Joseph Smith based it partially on Methodism early on. That was before the influence of Sidney Rigdon, really, and a bunch of other things that came later. In like that, that's the thing that a lot of Mormons don't get about the church is that the sort of 1830 church and the 1844 church are entirely different churches.
Yeah.
With very entirely different doctrines. Like the Book of Mormon becomes less and less the doctrinal center of the church.
Yeah, you can see the evolution of the Book of Mormon, especially with the Trinity and different things. And the way that they've changed things to match the later doctrines that were brought in, as you say, by Rigdon and others.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I like to think that Joseph started with a brown paper bag, an empty one that would have Methodism written on the outside. Then as he went through the next 10 years, he just picked up anything that looked good and just put it in the bag. And then eventually the letters on the outside, they faded and smudged a little bit, and it no longer said Methodism, it said Mormonism. Mm-hmm. So I just made that up as well. So I'll shake my hat again. We'd like to get 400 likes over the next week on this video. If you feel that you've enjoyed this or that you've enjoyed any of the videos here on the channel, please share it on your socials. That would really help us to expand the channel and to improve things week by week for you. Next week, it's Halloween on Monday. Halloween week is the PD's Halloween special. And it's the Paramormon investigation, where I went and spent one night alone in a really old, really haunted building and filmed what interactions I had with whatever spirits may or may not have been there. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, if you want a little bit of Halloween, this one next week will be, I mean, never mind the dead person on the front. It'll be interesting. And there's some interesting stuff that actually happens. I still don't know if I believe in ghosts or not. Devin, where do you stand on ghosts?
I don't. I don't think they exist.
No. Okay.
Despite my fantasy series where ghosts and monsters and demons and fairies and angels all exist in the real world, I am, for the most part, a materialist. Like I am astounded by consciousness as an emergent behavior of our physical bodies that just dissipates after we die.
Yeah, I would stand with you. But that night gave me some questions. That's all I'm going to say. So what? It was a really old building. Could have just been getting cold, everything relaxing a little bit, and creaking and different things. But it really plays with your mind when you're alone and it's dark, and you've been told all the stories about what lives in that building. One last question from Catherine Class. Speaking, so this has been a big issue in the church, and because you're the guest this evening, you get asked the question. She says she was indignant about the LGBTQ stuff at church. She pushed back, then felt betrayed by church history. Now she feels like the wind is out of her sails. Is more anger on the horizon ahead? What do you think?
All right. Okay, so let me see. Indignant about the LGBTQ stuff, then betrayed by church history. I mean, I think the anger will come and go. The way I see the ex-Mormon community is that it's a diaspora, and we all have sort of a different relationship with the mother country that is Mormonism, and I don't know. I think it's very hard to stop paying attention to it, and so much of it is enraging,
Mm,
or at least just annoying. Like when they changed the covenants in the temple, a couple of years ago, like that was ostensibly a positive change. That wives are no longer pledging specifically, covenanting specifically to obey their husbands, but like it's annoying because it's nowhere near enough. Um, and then just continuing issues, in the last few years, we've found out about Ensign Peak investments,
mm,
and a lot of stuff has come to light about sex abuse and the whole Sam Young Protect Every Child campaign. Like, there are always going to be, at least I imagine for the rest of our lifetime, these things about the church that will be annoying and enraging and frustrating. Um, but like the ex-Mormon community is going to continue to grow. I'm glad we have things now like Under the Banner of Heaven and all these other like documentary type shows that are being produced about the church and its culture and its malfeasance. Um, that we can, it will, the church will always define me at least a little bit, um,
yeah.
but it the church doesn't get to decide how it defines me. Like it's part of my history and my identity, but I get to choose what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think these, I guess, the things that are uncovered are the only revelations we're going to get over the next few decades, well, forever.
Uh,
You know, and
unless
go on.
like Bednar takes over and goes full Desnat or something, like
Man, that guy. Myself
yeah.
and sister PD just watched the Fifth Estate. That was the show
Mm,
that was shown in Canada last night about the church's money. It's on YouTube.
right.
Um,
I should look that up.
yeah, anyone
It's
who wants to see it, just go in your
interested.
YouTube after this and search the Fifth Estate. It's their video. It's been on there about 15, 16 hours. And it's 45 minutes all about how the church kind of launders money from Canada through BYU, and then in Australia and what they do there to get around the system. And then in the States, how out of the 100 billion they paid 1.6 billion to finish off City Creek Mall and things like that, and how they have, what excuses they give. And it really is very pharisaical how they kind of look at the line and they're like, no, we're towing the line exactly. There's no spirit of the law. It is literally,
Mm,
we will use charitable, no, we'll use the profits we made from charitable funds, but the profits don't count as charitable funds because they're profits. And so we'll use those profits to pay for City Creek Mall. That's their excuse.
yeah.
And it all stinks. But yeah, the Fifth Estate, go look it up. So Matt Woodruff, over 40,000 have already viewed it. So yeah, let's hope
Nice.
that really gets some traction and the world can see how interesting the Mormon Church's relationship with money really is. But Devin, I wanted to leave you with a big thank you, but also a joke tonight. And
Okay.
we'll end on this. How many sect leaders does it take to change a light bulb?
How many?
None, because they use gaslights.
Aha. Nice.
And on that note, folks, thank you, Devin, for being here. Thanks everyone else for being
Thank you for
here.
having me.
It's been great. Go to the website devinsunde.com, sunde.com, sorry, and yeah, download the PDF or go to the Etsy store and grab a copy. Hit him up on Instagram as well. That's where there's a lot of remastered artwork, and you can see how that's coming along. But yeah, it's all good stuff. We look forward to possibly a Love and Sex 2 at some point. I'm just putting it out there.
I don't know about that. I mean, if I were to do another, it would be following different characters. And I don't have at this time a story idea for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but-
maybe we'll see a graphic novel featuring the Schmooners. You never know.
Maybe.
But for now, we'll see you all later, everyone, and we'll see you on the Halloween special next week. Thanks, Devin.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.